we're coming to the end of the road here, very close to 100 rejections, which is typically the point where you need to give up. Now, whether or not I'm actually going to quit there, I don't know. I still have a month and a half left of summer without much to do. It is brutally hot, and I have nothing to do with my time except sitting here and send queries. So I may continue to do so even once it's become obvious that it's futile. But that will be the point where I stop bothering you with videos like this one. So, given that we are close to the end, I feel like I've been very coy about what this novel actually is, what it's about, characters, plot, theme, setting. So, I want to get into that today, but first, before we begin, I want to thank Lazy4K for providing my B-roll. Now, normally I do my own B-roll for these things, but this was an exception because I really wanted to get footage from this game, and I'm very happy for Lazy4K releasing high quality footage under a Creative Commons license, so I did not have to download and play 1 to 2 hours into a game that I was pretty lukewarm on the first time I played it. So thank you very much for that. It did have to be this game, and beyond that, it had to be this part of this game. Now, those of you who have played Hellblade 1 might recognize this area. This is Valravn's Keep. It's a pretty early area. At one point, the path splits, and you're given the option between fighting either the fire giant Surt or Valravn, described as the god of illusions. And I had to pick this particular piece of footage because it ties directly into the novel. Not the least of which is the name. The working title for what I wrote is Valravn. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, or who only know it from Hellblade, Hellblade has a really weird interpretation of this. It refers to Valravn as the god of illusions, which is a weird way of saying this. Like, Valravn isn't a deity, it's a class of monsters. They're monstrous, highly intelligent, arcane ravens. Ravens being very important to the Norse because they were the messengers of Odin. So a lot of ravens all over the place here, and Valravn were a particularly sinister breed of ravens, but never mind that. So the main character in Valravn is named Kevin McKay, and Kevin McKay is me. I resisted the urge. Most writers, the first thing they do, and usually also the second, third, fourth, and fifth, the main character is just like an idealized version of themselves. I resisted doing this for a really, really long time because I didn't see the point in it. The fun part of being a writer is that you can become any character you want, so why would you want to just be yourself? What's the point? Then at one point I was talking to an old coworker who said, and I was kind of discussing all the rejection I dealt with, and he said, maybe it's time for you to tell your own story. And I said, maybe I will. And then I ignored him for 4 more years. But I finally did it. Actually, the first time I did a story with a protagonist largely based on myself was right before I quit, which was a story called The Remnant Pieces. And it was not really based on me. It was sort of an alternate universe version of me. Whereas Kevin McKay in Valravn is much, much, much closer to who I actually was when I was his age. Valravn is a double life narrative. Kevin McKay eventually acquires a second persona that he uses to hide some of his activities, and that is a persona known as Lord Valravn. Now, this part, which is about the first third of the novel, loosely tracks on my own life. The narrator is not actually me, it's not Kevin, it's Doug Linden. Doug Linden is based on a friend of mine, a very old friend of mine. We were in a band together back in high school, and it starts off kind of tracking some things that are more or less true about how I kind of broke into music because I did this solo at a school event that got a really great response. I ended up in his band, not Doug, the person Doug is based on. And then eventually this led us to do this really weird guest performance that the real life Doug kind of sprang on me. And it was like a subculture thing. And to hide my identity, because I was already taking shit, I've been taking shit my whole life. I didn't want to get any more shit for doing a show like this. They agreed, him and the band we were playing with, to basically give me this alter identity. And mine in real life was not nearly as cool as Kevin's. I was known as Lord Roderick Bloodrose. Can you guess what kind of band it was? So that's about the first third of the novel. And by itself, this is only like a mildly interesting anecdote. Interesting mostly in that it kind of explains how I ended up like this and a little bit like what I was like back when I was, 16, 17 years old. But what Valravn does is it presumes that things kept going because in real life this was the end of it. But in the novel narrative, this character, Lord Valravn, sort of becomes like a local sensation in this, little sort of rural music community. And it ends up sort of thrusting Kevin into this sort of conundrum where suddenly this character that he hates is becoming really popular and he's considering whether he should continue to play this figure and for how long he's going to do it. That was kind of how it all starts, was that this is actually the first in what was intended to be a whole series. And the series was going to track Kevin's development. Eventually he was going to join this other band. And what I've wanted to do for a while was to do a music narrative that avoids the usual like behind the music cliches. I wanted to do something that was not the usual rock band rise and fall that everybody does, that you're familiar with. You're already picturing it in your head as I'm saying these things. Instead, this is more about a person who is thrust into the limelight against his will, who becomes a star without ever wanting to be, and kind of his conflict over it, and kind of how it affects his personality. And he'd have this giant arc that would proceed over 4 or 5 different novels as he kind of adapted himself to this new role that he was playing. And that was what I wanted to do. In the short term, of course, there was a lot of high school politics horse shit. Small town high schools have the best politics, by the way. They're awful. There's some amazing scenes in there. Scenes that I maybe people don't like them as much as I like them. But there's one moment, like one of the big turning moments, is where the main character, Lord Valravn, gets invited to perform at this party where Kevin McKay, was specifically disinvited. And there's this whole sort of thing of him showing up and playing this other character and kind of enjoying the fact that nobody knows that he's not supposed to be there, that everybody thinks he's this, kind of nerdy loser, and here he's like, destroying them all, rocking their socks off, and completely kind of mixing up the narrative. It all ends in this big event, which is sort of loosely based on an event that we actually had where I grew up. It's a lot bigger in the story, obviously, because you have to crank everything up to 11 for dramatic effect, where Kevin dramatically unmasks and finally reveals himself to everybody and sort of kills off Lord Valravn, although he comes back later in the series. And that's kind of where it ends. Big old high school narrative about how the geek kind of destroys everyone's expectations. In the middle of it, it gets into a lot of horse shit that I had to deal with growing up. Things like autism, of course. I think I've mentioned that a few times. Adoption, gender dysphoria. There's a lot of that shit that comes up. And again, it's not exactly my story. It's my story exaggerated. It's my story enhanced for dramatic effect. And according to damn near every agent I've talked to, there's no market for this. Nobody could possibly find this character or his story compelling. Not at all. It's too boring. The opening, we have it where we meet the characters and we meet Kevin and we meet Doug and we kind of get introduced to some of Kevin's hangups and why this is difficult for him. And that's too slow, okay? You need to have a really high octane opening that's just tense as action beats and drama beats and drinks being thrown in people's faces. That's what agents expect these days. Honestly, I look back at the shit I read in high school and especially middle school, and I could not imagine how it got published, because I can't imagine it getting published today. It would be way too slow for these fucking baby brains that I'm having to deal with. Anyway, I'm fast running out of ideas. I have sent out 9 different query letters for this. I've shopped it around under 4 different titles. I've shopped it around under 5 different genres, different age categories. I've rewritten the first part a few times, trying to appeal to the baby brains. I cannot make them care about the story the same way I care about this story. So we're at an impasse here. And while I can hold out hope, I've got the one request, which is better than I've done in 7 years doing this, mind you. but I know how this works. And in fact, I know even more. This has gotten dirtier and dirtier. Eventually, I'm going to have to talk. I'm going to do a video about the concept of full phishing and how the fact that an agent has asked to see your manuscript doesn't mean they actually want to see your manuscript. It could just be a stunt trying to reduce their risk to make it more likely they pick a winner. And it could result in you waiting, in some cases, literally years. And these days, because of that, because of this practice, which does appear to be growing more common, if you're not getting, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 requests, you might as well give up. So I'm now having to consider alternatives. And none of the alternatives are great. The thing of it is, for most creatives, for kind of anyone in any kind of, let's say, conventionally creative enterprise, things are really shitty right now and getting worse. Like, I don't even see any, rays of hope on the horizon. I can't think of anything that is better now for writers than when I quit. And I can think of a lot of things that are worse. I can think of a lot of things that are worse. Self-publishing was already awful when I quit, and it's gotten worse. It's gotten way worse. So I don't know that that's an option, but I've tried other things. When I did the Remnant Pieces, I tried some alternatives. I had a few original ideas that I thought might work, and they didn't. And I'm still here. So I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do with this thing. I mean, I guess I got to sit here and wait. I got to sit here and wait to see if any of these assholes I'm dealing with are going to deign to talk to me, which I don't foresee it happening. Anyway, I guess that's my spiel for now. I don't know if I'm going to keep doing these. It seems like kind of a waste of time, but it is my time to waste, so whatever. I guess we'll see.